So it's my pleasure to welcome Kimberly Richardson for our last presentation of the Rainbows Over the Rockies Summit. Kimberly is pronouns, preferred pronouns are she, her, hers. She is the extension agent in Deer Lodge County here in Montana. Kimberly, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you for being flexible this afternoon, and go ahead and take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there. It has just been an amazing 3 days of presentations, and having to come in as the last person is a tall order, especially following the panelist discussion. So bear with me. I hope we can learn some things together, and of course, then we'll get ready to wrap it up. So again, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Deb. Thanks, everybody, for such a wonderful summit. Thank the audience and attendees. We couldn't have done this without you, and we really appreciate the ability to get this platform out to everybody. All right, let's see. Paul, can you advance my slides? I'm not being able to move those forward.
Let me see if I'm able to.
Okay. I might just have to click on it. Let me check. There we go.
Yep.
All right. So as Paul said, I'm Kimberly Richardson, she, her, hers. And I work for Montana State University as an extension agent out in the field, Deer Lodge County, which is southwest Montana. If some of you on the summit are not from Montana or haven't been to Montana, so I like to say I'm in the really pretty part of Montana, but Montana is gorgeous all the way around. So anyhow, I work with 4-H. I'm a sole agent, so I definitely get to play around in all sorts of sectors, from agriculture to horticulture to diversity and inclusion. And one of my most recent accolades, or something I'm really proud of, is the Montana State University Extension Group decided to make some strategy teams, and I was fortunate enough and honored to become the new diversity chair for Extension in Montana. So super excited about that. A couple of the pictures. So the middle picture, just so everybody gets an idea, that's my kiddo. He is 3 and is now being detained outside, so hopefully we won't have any child bombing of the presentation. Again, I'd like to welcome everybody, whatever language you speak, whatever credo you are, please know that you are welcome. And as an extension agent, we definitely have to uphold that we do not allow discrimination in any or all of our activities and programs. And these are on the basis we do not discriminate against race, color, national origin, gender, religion, age, disability, political benefits, sexual orientation, marital and family status. And so as an extension educator, this summit drives things very much home for us and how we're able to see each other. And the name of the presentation I came up with was See the People. And some of you might wonder why I say see the people. Well, it's really magical because S is for see, E is for everyone, and the last E is for equally. And it is a magical thing when we can see everyone equally. I want to go over a few little guidelines and a couple of disclaimers. I am not a communications expert. I am not an expert in LGBTQ plus communication or terms, but I am an educator, and I definitely have an interest not only to my constituency, but also to the university to be diverse in our teachings and our educational platforms. I'd like to set some guidelines, and I know that you all have been tremendous. I've listened all 3 days to every presentation, and everyone has been very respectful, but I'm just going to go over these just again so that we're clear that everybody is welcome. This is a sensitive topic, sensitive material, and we have a very sensitive audience. Make yourself comfortable. I know it's with this virtual platform, it's a little easier, I think, and maybe sometimes for some of us too comfortable because we're in our own homes and in our own spaces. But again, please make yourself comfortable. There's no right answer and there's no wrong answer. Practice self-focus. Be aware of your own feelings and emotions. If you have to step away, please do. Expect and accept discomfort. Accept and accept unfinished business. This is a process for all of us, and we're just in the beginning stages, and we need to help everyone we can understand that. So there's going to be a lot of unfinished business. when I teach classes in actual classroom settings, I do have a parking lot. We can use the chat box as the parking lot, and Paul can watch that. That's where I like to put things. If you have something that pops up, you know, it's something you need to know an answer to, please put it in the chat box. I do not mind stopping the presentation to answer questions. Or if it's just an idea or something you'd like to share, please go ahead and post it in that chat box. And then, like Paul said, if you want to use the question and answer, you know, you can use that platform also. If you do something in the parking lot, please share it with at least the host and the panelists so that we can get that information. All right. Just as many of you have gone through many, many journeys to come here, to be here today, to know who you are, this presentation is a journey. And I want to give a real quick shout out to someone who's near and dear to my heart that has given me the blessing of being able to see his journey, as well as, you know, be able to be an enlightened person because of him in my life. His name is Tomas Frazier, and he is my cousin, and he has really been fundamental in letting me see the world and, you know, really looking at people on an equal platform. So our journey today, we're going to go real briefly through communication, look at some biases, look at some of the other languages that are used to define folks. We're going to definitely talk about some pronouns. And then lastly, we're going to find that treasure chest, and we're going to have our takeaways. So communication. Communication, I think most of us will agree, is one of the most difficult things to master. And I don't know if even in a lifetime you can really, really master this. And this little cartoon is just an example of showing us how communication, you know, when we speak to people, how easily we can be misunderstood, or vice versa, can really misunderstand others when they say things. So, you know, it really takes two people in that communication process to be able to understand what is being said, how it's being said. And I know that with COVID-19, all of us have turned into this virtual platform. So we're very, very mindful of what we're saying, because we're live and recorded. So real quick definition, communication is the process of passing information and understanding from one person to another. I want the audience to remember that it is a process. It's not something that we just inherently have, that we are easily able to, you know, find every person and be able to communicate with them. With each individual, with each of our experiences, it's going to be a process. The other thing is it's from one person to another. So there's two people, there's two brains, there's two individuals listening and two individuals responding. So there can be areas where there's lots of misunderstanding. Now switching over to biases and really looking, I know a lot of you probably are really familiar with the iceberg representations graphically and pictorially, and here's another one. And this really, I think, nails down how we look at biases and, you know, where they live in our brains. And so we have three sets of our mind, and there's three places, three spaces. There's the conscious mind, our subconscious mind, and our unconscious mind. Our conscious mind is very cognizant of what is going on right this minute, and we're able to adjust that and be able to react in our present state. Our subconscious mind is the floating mind, because it's in between those two states of some things that are buried a little further and maybe not necessarily at the forefront. And then again, it can jump into the conscious mind as being able to have those words or experiences right in a place where they're easily able to push into the present or to the conscious mind. Explicit bias lives in our conscious mind. This is where we are very well aware of that bias, and we're able to make that change. We're able to say, oh, this is how I'm going to do things because I can presently see it. I'm aware of it. The subconscious mind has a little bit of both, but mostly it resides in that explicit bias because you can jump it into the present. The one I want to concentrate on for today is the implicit bias. And that's the bias that is buried deep down in that glacier, deep down underneath the surface that nobody's able to see, not even ourselves sometimes, and really bringing that to the forefront so that we may not be able to access that unconscious mind in our present mind, but we need to be familiar and kind of understand where we are when we make decisions, when we, fall into labeling, when we fall into stereotyping. Where is that coming from? And a lot of times the answers can be found when we start looking in our unconscious mind. And it's really, really difficult to start changing things out of the unconscious mind. And I know that we had several presenters that are therapists, and I'm sure that they would agree that it is really difficult sometimes to change those underlying implicit biases. So why do we have biases? Why do they exist? And here's just a graphic. It's culture, it's our upbringing, it's, where we lived, who we were around, our experiences, that formulates in our brains. Our brains are such powerful organs that they're able to take all of these sensory experiences and things that we've seen, even from media, and transition it into a little box, I'd like to think of it, to where as soon as we see that again, we recognize it and our brain automatically puts a tag on that. And with that, sorry, I'm going to bring up a poll, if it'll let me here. And it's just a real quick question on how quickly you think our brain processes images. And I'm going to go ahead and open it and give everybody a couple of seconds to fill that out.
And I can keep an eye on that. Looks like folks are filling that out now, so.
Sounds great.
I think
and so with that, we have, our brain is a phenomenal tool and organ. It does some incredible things that, again, falls into that unconscious mind. There are things that we do that our brain does for us that we don't even realize that it's doing for us, which is really, really a fascinating thing. And we could, I think there could be multiple sessions of topics on the brain and how it works and how it functions. And we're not here for that today. We're just going to look at that. And so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And it looks like most of the folks either had no answer or chose the right answer. And actually, previous to the most recent study coming out of MIT, the studies were showing that it was 100 milliseconds. And now it's actually, they have proven that it's 13 milliseconds, which is really, really fascinating. So if you think about that, it's your brain looks at an object and immediately within, fractions of a second, it makes its decision, it puts its place. So now with that knowledge, I'm going to go ahead and show you the slide that you've already seen, but I want you to utilize the chat box. This is going to be word association, and I want you to chat in the chat box immediately as soon as you see that picture in one word, what you think. And Paul, if you'd watch that chat for me, that would be great. And if you want to start shouting out answers that people are posting in the chat, that would be perfect.
You bet. Don't see any posted yet. Let me just check the attendee list here.
Okay.
Okay. Ugly, ugh, eep, eek, die. That's all of them for now.
Yes, well, that hits the message home, and that's what I was hoping for. So as we see, does anybody know the background behind this spider? Does anybody know his story or her story or their story? But right away, it's yuck, ugh, smash, kill. And some folks would be, poison. And so the idea is that see how quickly your brain comes to that knowledge and puts it into your focus, into your conscious mind. Then it's just like, yuck, I have to kill this thing. And you probably, in this case, would probably be right in smashing this guy because he is a brown recluse. Luckily in Montana, we don't have these guys. But ultimately, this is just a picture of a spider. Now type in the word that this screen brings to you. The first thing that comes to mind.
Red, red. Favorite color, bright. Red, red,
Nice.
warm, blank, red, red.
Perfect. And the one thing that I was really wanting to see and see if folks, a lot of times folks won't use red because in some individuals, it definitely brings out anger. I've never had that, but again, you know, someone said warm, you know, those are the types of things, but guess what, guys? Or guess what, everyone? It is a color. What about this one?
Cute, aw, puppy, puppy, work, cute, dog, puppy.
Yes, and this is a perfect picture. Go ahead, Paul, sorry.
Innocent, not.
Those are great responses, everyone. So yes, this little guy or this little pup, you know, everything we see, you know, it's like puppy, puppy, puppy. But ultimately, this little puppy is an animal. And lastly, as I'm sure we're all getting the point, but what's the first word that comes to mind when you see this graphic?
Hip, cute, cool, hip, person, girl, cool.
Great. Yes. And we got girl in there. And, you know, it's just amazing how quickly our brains just associate and automatically, you know, we see certain symbols and certain signals that say, oh, in our brain, this is what it is. And that's what we project without even really thinking about it. It just kind of shows up there. And that's the thing, you know, when we're looking at biases that we really want to try to hone in on. And again, it's really difficult because as we've demonstrated in this illustration, it's quick. Our brain goes so quickly and processes that so we can get on to the next thing. And so again, just like our other previous slides, basically this is a human, a person. So the question remains, are you conscious of your unconscious bias? And so this is something that I think individually we'll all have to answer. And I think having an understanding of not being able to control those biases sometimes will help us on that platform of, you know, being more open and more willing to be reserved before we have an answer and not be so quick to judge, not be so quick to label, because now we're understanding where some of those things are coming from, and to be really respectful and try to convince our brain otherwise that we want to go this direction. So it is a challenge. It is my challenge to everyone. But I think if we're able to look into our bias and why it's happening, and at least know that be aware that it's there, then there is more likely the possibility that we're going to be very respectful of each other and be able to look at each other equally. So this brings in, who are you? That question, who are you? And the other question that I think sometimes might be a little bit more important is, why are you? And one of the graphics that I use with this presentation for that is I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Alice in Wonderland caterpillar, you know, when he's talking to Alice and he's like, who are you? And, you know, I'm Alice. But he knows through his infinite wisdom that she's something more than that. And I think that's where we need to really look at ourselves, because we are more. And the other thing is, we are enough just the way we are and just who we are. So now I have an activity. I don't know if in lieu of time we will forego it, but I did steal this activity from Joe Wren. So Joe, if you're out there, shout out to you because this is a great activity. I have lots of great responses from it. So if you folks want to do this in about, I'm going to give you guys about 10 seconds. I already have mine completed, so I will just share mine with you. But basically, it's just making a name tent and putting out on the front part of your tent all the names that you like to be associated by. You can put your pronouns, your last names, your nicknames, things that were, you enjoyed being called. And then on the inside of your tent, there is all the things that you really don't like to be called or would rather not be called, or things that, may have been from your past that folks, made fun of you with. And so I'm just going to go ahead and see if I can put this up and share this screen for a minute. And maybe, Paul, can you still see my little icon of my video? I don't know if folks are going to be able to see this, but
yeah, if you pull it back maybe just a little bit.
Okay.
Right about there.
Yep. And so if everybody can take a quick look at that, I will just share out just because I know we're running short on time. But this is a great activity, so I do encourage you to do this on your own, and you can do this while we're talking also. But basically, so on my name tent, I used a crayon as my writing utensil, and I used a pink one because pink is my favorite color. And the names I have on my tent on the outside are Miss Richardson, Kimmy, Kimberly, she, her, hers, Pumpkin, and then one of my most recent ones, which I never thought I would really want to be called this, but now that I hear it out of his voice, it just is so touching, but Mama. And then on the inside, so I have Ma'am, and one of the things is I think I was at a amusement park, and I was probably early 20s, and a gentleman behind me said, "Excuse me, ma'am." And it was the first time I think in my life that I was called ma'am, but it made me feel old. So I put that on the inside. Then I have Kim, and I have it in quotes because there's only one person who calls me Kim that makes me very angry, and that is my significant other. When he says Kim, I turn into rage, and I don't know exactly why, but when it comes out of his mouth, anybody else can say it, but when it comes out of his mouth as Kim, it's pretty serious. And then there's some other not nice things. I will say a few of them. I will refrain from the curse word ones, but I have green giant in here. So in high school, I'm about 6'2", and so really tall, really lanky, and every time I'd walk down the hall, we'd hear, "Ho, ho, ho, green giant." And so that, even hearing the commercials really, hurt my insides and didn't make me feel good. And another one was Russian. I have no Russian descent that I'm aware of, but it was just interesting that was one of the things. And then jock, I was very much involved in sports. I came from rural America, so the term hick was also used, which was very derogatory, at least to me. I felt, why are they calling me this? And I guess one of the other ones that it's just amazing that my brain has held on to this one. And I want to say I was maybe in the 3rd grade. I had no idea about this word or what it meant or the context of it, but I had a young man call me a skinhead. And ever since then, I mean, even saying it now, it makes me almost tremble, but it was just so shocking to hear that, because here's this person making a judgment towards me that doesn't even know me. And at that time, I didn't even know what that meant or what it was in reference to. And so I think the purpose of this exercise is to realize that when we're speaking to folks, they have all of those things in the inside of their tent. They might not share them with you, but they're there. And that's why it's so important when we address people, we address them the way they want to be addressed. Because if we go and address folks in certain ways that they don't want to be addressed, it makes communication very difficult and sometimes impossible. So now I want to shift over to some of the I guess, person-friendly languages or terms out there. I know this isn't going to be specifically relevant in some frames, but please bear with me. It's just to give an outline for folks, a basic understanding of what these terms mean. So we have first-person language. And people-first language emphasizes the individuality, equality, and dignity of people with differences and disabilities. This language defines people primarily by their, rather than defining people primarily by their differences or disabilities, people-first language conveys respect by emphasizing the fact that people with differences or disabilities are first and foremost just that, people. And there are some benefits and there are some derogatory things that come from this also. So again, I'm not advocating for the usage of any of this. I think that you use what needs to be used and based on the individuals that you're talking to. But here's a couple of examples of person-first language. A person experiencing homelessness, a person with autism, a person living in recovery, a person experiencing transition. Identity-first language is language which places the differences or disability-related word first in a phrase. This came about because a lot of people wanted to own that difference and own that disability, and they wanted to have it be a part of them, not just, you know, explaining who they are. They embraced it. So examples of this would be Black person, lesbian, British person, autistic person. Person-centered language. Language that puts people first, respecting the dignity, worth, unique qualities, and strengths of every individual. Again, this one is really user-friendly as it looks at the people, and it's respect. Examples include good self-advocate, isn't ready for, unaware of opportunities, utilizes services and supports when necessary. Now moving into pronouns. And pronouns are so powerful because they allow the individual to express to others how they want to be referred, which I think is key. So pronouns, there's a list here, but this isn't an exhaustive list. And those of you, we've had lots and lots and lots of talks of the different ways to utilize pronouns, but I think this definitely gives people the opportunity to say, hey, this is who I am. This is how I want to be referred to. So we have a few examples here. Shay ate their food because they were hungry. Tyler ate her food because Z was hungry. Danny ate their food because Z was hungry. Ray ate ear food because E was hungry. And so there are multiple ways to address folks in the way that they want to be addressed, and just be really mindful that we're all going to make mistakes. I've made mistakes on this presentation and not even knowing, using the everyday language that we come out with, and that it can be offensive at times and it can be hurtful. And we need to acknowledge that. We need to go ahead and try to make that better with the person, maybe more in a private setting, but giving them that acknowledgement that we did make a mistake, and then definitely try to do better. So the key takeaways, or what I like to refer to as the treasure or the golden nugget at the end of the rainbow. This is something that Jeff Myers said in his opening keynote address. Who's awesome? You're awesome. All of you are awesome, no matter where you come from, what you believe, what your biases are. You are awesome. Never, never forget that. And don't let people steer you away from the fact that you are awesome. Next is try to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is very difficult, but vulnerability is what makes us us and gives us our uniqueness and gives us our humanness. And we need to be vulnerable with ourselves so that when other folks are being vulnerable, we appreciate that and we can be empathetic. Also, we need to give grace. We need to give grace to others when they make mistakes. We need to give grace to others when they don't know what we know. We need to give grace where folks are not educated. We need to give grace when things become tough. And ultimately, we need to give grace to ourselves so that we have that opportunity to learn, that we have that opportunity to build, and we have the opportunity to embrace each other as equals. And finally, this also came from our keynote speaker, but we are stronger with our differences. We are stronger with our diversity. And one day we will see each other equally as equals. And the more we try to check out our biases and be that person, the better we will be, because this world is a wonderful place, a magical place, because we are all different. We are all unique. We bring many, many, many wonderful gifts to the table, and we need to keep that uppermost in our mind. And with that, I will close. And here's some references. Here is my contact information. And Paul, I think we may have done it, time-wise anyway.
Nice job, Kimberly. We can see if there's any last questions or comments for Kimberly. It has been a long day for sure, but it was a nice recap, and appreciate the mentions of our opening speakers and other presenters, Kimberly. That was great.
And Paul, I just have the poll for folks. If we don't have any questions, I'll just put that up there. Folks, feel free to answer the poll. I am a tenure track faculty member at Montana State University, so all of your feedback I take very seriously and can utilize it so I can keep my job.
And somebody just posted, please share the references. So maybe you could pull that up after you
Sure.
post the poll there.
Let me see if I can pull that up here pretty
And
quick.
some kudos coming your way too. Great presentation, Kimberly. Great job. Thank you. Awesome.
All right, let me see if I can pull that poll up for everybody real quick. There it is. Taking me a minute to see that pop up here. Okay, here it is, folks. And I'll just open it up for a little bit, Paul. I think there's a couple minutes or maybe a minute or so before you have to wrap her up.
Yep, I can see it's posted. You can probably hear the bells in the distance there.
Yes. And thank you all very, very much. And also another shout out to all of our presenters, all of our attendees, all of the folks that made this possible, Paul and Deb especially, their diligence, their steadfastness with trying to get all of this up and running. And it has been an absolutely amazing 3 days. So thank you both very much. And everybody else that was on the committee and all of our sponsors through this entire event. And looking forward to seeing some of these faces maybe next year in person.
That's great. And your timing's perfect with the bells going off here. We're at the top of the hour. We can leave that poll open for a couple of minutes. And we do have just some concluding words. Deb and I were just going to close out the summit with just some concluding statements. So let us know, Kimberly, when you want to wrap up that poll, and if you have any final words that you'd like to leave us with.
Sure. I'll let the poll run just about one more minute and then we'll close it down. But again, You all are awesome, just like Jeff Myers said. All of us are awesome in our own way. And don't forget that. Be resilient in that. Know that there are lots of resources out there. And even when you do feel alone, because all of us have our journey. Our journey is pretty private, sort of like the inner depths of our tents that we create with our names. Not everybody's going to know all of those intricacies, but you do, and use that as power. Use it as your strength. Go back to it and say, this is who I am, and I'm proud of who I am. And again, you are awesome. And I have that poll closing. Paul, it's kind of doing like a final countdown. So there's about 10 seconds, folks, to get the poll in if you haven't already. All right, it is in the books.
All right, great. Thanks again, Kimberly, for doing a great job.
You bet.
The summit. I'll let you save that poll. I know it takes a second to do that as well, and if you would, and then let me know when you're done with that.
Sure. And I'm done with that, so you can take over full control now.
All right, sounds good. Thanks again, Kimberly.
You bet.
Well, we just wanted to spend a couple of minutes with just some concluding remarks on what's next. And I'm going to invite my colleague, Deb, who has been kind of behind the scenes for a lot of this 3-day summit, but she has been in the front of the line coordinating this and doing the heavy lifting for really about 6 months leading up to this. And of course, we were planning to do this live on a campus here at MSU. And I'm just so glad that we were able to pull this off virtually, in large part because of Deb's hard work. So Deb, just again, another heartfelt thank you for all the hours, countless hours that you've put into this. From the bottom of my heart and on behalf of all our sponsors and partners, thank you for everything you've done.
Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes, coming through loud and clear.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Paul. This was definitely a group effort between you and I and that planning committee that was amazing. And then you've been looking at our list of sponsors and partners for the past 3 days. And, definitely group effort. Yay, us. And
I'm just gonna
basically, what?
I'm just gonna